All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We are putting on our music historian hats today, and honestly, maybe a little bit of audio forensic gear too. We're going to deconstruct the staggering 45-hour recording sessions behind a track that didn't just push the boundaries of pop music, it completely rewrote the rulebook. I'm talking, of course, about the Beatles' Strawberry Fields Forever. We're going to track exactly how a simple, fragile acoustic demo evolved through unimaginable studio obsession into a full-blown psychedelic masterpiece.
You know, John Lennon himself didn't actually look at this track as just another pop song. He literally called it psychoanalysis set to music. It was this deeply personal, incredibly vulnerable exploration, heavily fueled by his recent experiences with LSD and a really profound sense of childhood nostalgia. He was essentially trying to dissolve his ego and put his lifelong feeling of being different directly onto a piece of magnetic tape.
So to really wrap our heads around how this masterpiece came together, we're going to break it down into 5 key pieces: psychoanalysis set to music, the 45-hour studio ordeal, the impossible tape edit, pioneering the music video, and finally, a psychedelic cultural legacy.
Starting off with Part 1, Psychoanalysis Set to Music, and the Almeria Origins. Let's trace the mental and geographic roots of the song, which actually begin with Lennon in a pretty vulnerable state on a film set in Spain.
Picture this. It's the autumn of 1966. The Beatles have just pulled the plug on touring after a wildly controversial, completely exhausting year. Lennon is over in Almeria, Spain, filming How I Won the War, and he's feeling incredibly isolated without his bandmates around. So he starts writing a song based on a really fond, nostalgic memory, playing in the wooded garden of a Salvation Army children's home back in Liverpool called Strawberry Field. But instead of just writing a straightforward diary entry, the lyrics become this ego-dissolving reflection on his inner psyche. He takes a simple childhood memory and injects it with this heavy, surreal, psychological weight.
Now, what's really fascinating is what he was reading at the time. Lennon was deep into studying Maya, which is the Hindu concept of illusion. When you combine that spiritual reading with his hallucinogenic drug use, it directly shapes the song's hypnotic, dreamlike philosophy. It all culminates in that famous, defining lyric, "Nothing is real." He was literally questioning his very identity and existence.
Okay, moving on to Part 2, the 45-hour studio ordeal and building the sonic layers. Because turning that philosophical poem into reality took the Beatles a grueling 45 hours in the studio over 5 weeks.
Just look at how intense their experimentation was. They didn't just record the song and call it a day. They essentially built 3 completely different versions of it. They kicked things off on November 24th with Take 1, which is this lighter, gentle, dreamy acoustic demo backed by a Mellotron keyboard. Fast forward a few days to November 29th, and it's evolved into Take 7, complete with slurred vocals and intricate arpeggio patterns. But Lennon still isn't satisfied, right? He wants something darker, something heavier. So by late December, they've hammered out Take 26, a raucous, fast-paced version driven by heavy percussion and a dense orchestral score. This is where they truly start using the recording studio itself as an instrument. They're pioneering a whole new sonic toolkit to create an entirely fresh palette of sounds. For example, they take the Mellotron's swinging flute setting and actually record it in reverse to get this haunting avant-garde tone. George Harrison brings in an Indian board-mounted zither called a swarmandal, giving the track this exotic, raga-esque descending melody. Then you have producer George Martin scoring cellos and brass that create this incredibly intense, exotic pastoral sound. Add in tape loops and backwards hi-hats, and you get this percussive cacophony of noise. It was just pure sonic alchemy.
Which brings us to Part 3, the impossible tape edit, or joining the unjoinable. This is absolutely the climax of our audio investigation, the moment Lennon makes a completely outrageous demand.
So, Lennon is listening back to the acetates, and he decides he loves the first half of the gentle, dreamy Take 7. But he wants it to seamlessly transition into the aggressive, orchestral, faster-paced Take 26 for the second half. The catch? Take 7 is in a lower key and a slower tempo. Take 26 is in a higher key and a faster tempo. And remember, it's 1966. There's no digital software. Joining these 2 completely incompatible takes was, theoretically, impossible.
But Lennon just casually tells producer George Martin, "You can fix it, George. No pressure, right?" Armed with literally nothing but a pair of editing scissors, 2 tape machines, and a very speed control, engineer Jeff Emmerich has to perform miraculous sonic surgery. He realizes that if he increases the tape speed of the slower Take 7, he can raise its pitch and tempo. Then, by decreasing the tape speed of the faster Take 26, he lowers its pitch and tempo.
Amazingly, manipulating those tape speeds brings the two takes into the exact same key and tempo, allowing Emmerich to physically slice and splice the two magnetic tapes together right in the middle of the word going in the second chorus.
The result was absolute magic, a seamless collision of serenity and eerie gothic chaos that literally bent the physics of recorded sound. And that mechanical pitch shifting, that is exactly what gave Lennon's lead vocal that otherworldly, sluggish, swimming quality that defines the whole track. If you pop on some headphones and listen to the stereo mix, you can actually hear the cello and trumpet abruptly pan from left to right at the exact moment the splice happens. This masterstroke also birthed the avant-garde fade-out, fade-in coda technique at the end, where the track fades to silence only to surge back in with reversed flutes, chaotic drums, and Lennon murmuring the words cranberry sauce, which of course conspiracy theorists famously misheard as "I buried Paul."
All right, on to part 4. Pioneering the music video and redefining pop visuals, because the innovation absolutely did not stop with the audio tape. Since the band wasn't touring anymore, they had to figure out how to promote the single on TV without actually showing up. So in January 1967, they head to Knowles Park to film a promotional clip. But instead of just standing around lip-syncing with their instruments like literally every other pop group of the era, the mustachioed Beatles presented a completely new, mature, and honestly pretty austere image to a very bewildered public. They're in psychedelic clothing, Lennon's wearing his round granny glasses for the first time. They looked way more like 19th century mystics than the lovable mop tops everyone was used to.
And director Peter Goldman goes all out with incredibly experimental camera techniques to perfectly mirror the surreal, disorienting vibe of the music itself. The film is packed with reverse film effects, super long dissolves, and these jarring day-to-night jump cuts. You've got spooky extreme close-ups of their new facial hair and just purely abstract imagery, like the band jumping out of a tree or pouring pots of colored paint all over an upright piano. It wasn't a performance, it was avant-garde visual art.
Music critic Chris Ingham really hit the nail on the head here, calling it brilliantly memorable as a statement of iconoclastic artistic intent. And that captures exactly why this clip is so vital. It's recognized today by institutions like the Museum of Modern Art in New York as a foundational text of the modern music video. It proved, once and for all, that visuals could amplify the thematic depth of a song rather than just marketing the faces of the singers.
Finally, part 5, a psychedelic cultural legacy. Let's step back and look at the massive crater this 45-hour experiment left on the 1960s. Just imagine being Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys for a second. You're deep into producing your own highly ambitious masterpiece, the Smile album. You hear Strawberry Fields Forever on your car radio, and your reaction is this devastating quote: "They did it already. Maybe it's too late." He was in absolute awe, realizing the Beatles had already achieved the exact avant-garde psychedelic pop heights he was striving for. It was actually a major factor in Wilson ultimately abandoning the Smile project altogether. That's how high the bar had been raised.
The ripple effect of this release was just massive. It firmly planted the flag of romanticism, that focus on childhood purity and imagination, right at the center of the rising British psychedelic rock scene. It launched that whole English pop pastoral mood that directly influenced bands like Pink Floyd. It completely normalized extreme studio manipulation and electronic dissonance for mainstream pop audiences. But, ironically, because it was released as a double A-side with Penny Lane, the sales were split in the UK chart algorithms. So the single actually stalled at number 2, officially breaking the Beatles' legendary 4-year streak of UK #1 hits. They were kept off the top spot by Engelbert Humperdinck, just a crazy quirk of history for arguably the greatest pop record ever made.
So I'll leave you with this to chew on. When we listen to this masterpiece today, does its true magic lie in the melancholic, LSD-tinged nostalgia of Lennon's vulnerable lyrics, or is the genius entirely found in the science, the agonizing 45 hours of studio obsession, the backward flutes, and that miraculous tape splice? It's a fascinating artifact. Whether you lean toward the soul of the songwriter or the science of the producer, there's absolutely no denying that Strawberry Fields Forever changed music forever. Thanks for exploring this amazing track with me.